In the Norwegian mountains, where valleys cut deep between peaks that scrape the sky, there are places where winter never ends. Not because of climate or elevation, but because of older agreements, bargains made in desperation, promises that bind generations yet unborn. This is a story about a village trapped in eternal winter, about children taken to become warriors for the end times, and about the god of thunder who had to choose between honoring an ancient oath and saving innocent lives. The valley of Kvitdal had not seen spring in 3 years. While the rest of Norway experienced the normal cycle of seasons, while snow melted and flowers bloomed in the surrounding mountains, Kvitdal remained frozen. The snow was always fresh, always falling. It never accumulated beyond a certain depth, but it never melted. The sun, when it appeared, gave light but no warmth. It was as if the valley existed in a permanent winter, disconnected from the natural flow of time. The villagers had adapted at first. They built greenhouses heated by generators and imported food from outside, surviving through determination and modern technology. But then the children started disappearing. The first was little Ingrid, 7 years old, with blonde hair and bright blue eyes. She had been playing in the snow near her home when her mother called her for dinner. When her mother looked outside moments later, Ingrid was gone. Footprints led away from the house into the forest at the valley's edge. Small child-sized footprints, accompanied by larger ones, massive ones. Prints that pressed deep into the frozen ground. The search party followed the tracks for hours, but the prints simply ended at the tree line. They vanished completely, as if Ingrid and whatever had taken her had simply dissolved into the snow. They searched for days, but found nothing. The police assumed a kidnapping, an outsider who knew the terrain. They expanded the search, bringing in helicopters and tracking dogs. But the dogs refused to follow the trail. They would approach the forest edge where the tracks ended, then back away, whimpering, refusing to go further. A week later, another child disappeared, then another. It was always in the same way, playing in the snow, vanishing, tracks leading to the forest, then nothing. After the 5th disappearance, the villagers began to panic. Some families left, abandoning their homes and fleeing to other towns. But others had nowhere to go. Kvitdal was their ancestral home. Families had lived here for generations. They couldn't just leave. And besides, where the children had gone, the children might return. Parents couldn't abandon the valley while their sons and daughters were still missing. So they stayed, and fortified, and waited for answers. The answers came from the eldest member of the village. Astrid was 96 years old. Her family had lived in Kvitdal for 8 generations. She remembered stories her grandmother had told her, stories she had dismissed as folklore until now. She called a meeting in the village hall and told them the truth they didn't want to hear. The valley was bound by an ancient pact. During the Black Death, when plague ravaged Norway in the 14th century, Kvitdal had been on the verge of extinction. The disease had killed 2/3 of the population. The survivors were starving. Winter was coming, and they had no food, no strength, no hope. The village leader at that time, Astrid's ancestor, had made a desperate bargain. She had climbed to the highest peak above the valley and called out to anyone who would listen, any power that could save them. And something had answered. The ice giants, the Jitner, ancient enemies of the gods, but not enemies of desperate humans. They had offered a deal. They would protect the valley and ensure it survived the plague, preserving it through the centuries. In exchange, every few generations, when the time was right, they would come. They would take the valley's children, raise them as their own, and train them to be warriors for the final battle. For Ragnarok, the village leader had accepted. What choice did she have? Let everyone die now, or sacrifice unknown children in an unknown future. She had chosen survival, and the pact had been sealed. The villagers didn't want to believe it, couldn't accept that their ancestors had traded away their children's future. But Astrid continued. The pact was supposed to activate only when Ragnarok approached, when the end times were near. The giants were preparing, gathering their forces. The children taken from Kvidal were being trained in the frozen halls beneath the mountains. They weren't dead, weren't harmed, but they were being transformed, turned into something between human and giant, warriors who could fight alongside the Jitner when the final battle came. The perpetual winter was a sign, the giant's magic spilling into the valley, a reminder that the pact was active and payment was being collected. One of the parents, a man named Eric, demanded to know how to break the pact, how to get the children back. Astrid shook her head. The pact was binding, made with blood and witnessed by the powers of ice and stone. Only the gods themselves could break it, and the gods had their own concerns, their own preparations for Ragnarok. Why would they help humans who had bargained with their enemies? But someone was listening. Thor had been traveling through the Norwegian mountains, checking the borders between Midgard and Jotunheim, ensuring the giants stayed in their realm. He had sensed the magic in Kvidal, the frozen valley that defied natural law, and he had come to investigate. He arrived in the form of a wanderer, a large man with a red-brown beard, calloused hands, and eyes that crackled with restrained power. The villagers recognized him instantly. Something in their blood knew divinity when it stood before them. Thor listened to their story, to Astrid's account of the ancient pact, and to the parents' desperate pleas for help. His face grew dark with anger, not at the villagers, but at the giants. The Jitner were preparing for Ragnarok. That much was true. But Ragnarok was not meant to come yet. The signs were not complete. The giants were trying to force it, to accelerate the end times before the gods were ready. And they were using stolen children as pawns. Thor declared he would retrieve the children, break the pact, and ensure the valley was freed. But Astrid stopped him, explaining the complication he hadn't considered. If he broke the pact, the protection would end. And she revealed the terrible truth the other villagers didn't know. The pact didn't just promise protection from the plague. It promised protection forever, from all disasters, from all threats. Kvidal had survived avalanches that should have buried it, floods that should have drowned it, and famines that should have starved it. For 600 years, the valley had been impossibly fortunate. That was the giant's magic. That was the price of the children. If Thor broke the pact, all that protection would end. The valley would face whatever fate had been held back for 6 centuries. It might not survive. The villagers argued. Some wanted the pact broken immediately, their children worth any risk. Others hesitated. If breaking the pact doomed the entire valley, was it worth it? The debate grew heated. Thor watched silently, understanding the impossible choice he'd given them. Finally, Eric, whose daughter had been the first taken, asked Thor to take him to the giants, to let him see his daughter before he decided. Thor agreed, but warned that what Eric saw might change his mind. The journey to the giants' realm took only moments. Thor opened a path through stone and ice into the spaces where the Jitner dwelt. They emerged in a vast cavern carved from glacial ice, lit by an eerie blue glow. And there, the children trained. 40 of them, from Kvidal and other villages, taken over generations. They were changed. Larger than they should be, their skin tinged blue-white, their eyes glowing with cold light. They moved with inhuman grace and power. They were becoming giants, weapons for the end times. Eric searched desperately for Ingrid and found her. She looked the same, still 7, but when she moved, there was something stronger, something other. He called her name. Ingrid turned, her eyes widening in recognition. "Papa," she said, her voice deep and echoing. She ran to him, and her skin felt like ice. Eric wept, asking if she wanted to come home. Ingrid looked confused. She spoke of her great purpose, of the honor of fighting in Ragnarok. She spoke like a soldier, a believer. But underneath, Eric could see his daughter was still there. A female giant, 30 feet tall, introduced herself as Skadi. She told Eric the children were not slaves, but were being given a choice to participate in the most important moment in existence. Was it fair to take them as children? No, Skadi admitted, but the alternative was a normal life, forgotten by time. This way, they became legends. Was that not a gift? Eric wanted to argue, but looking at Ingrid's strength and purpose, he wasn't certain. Thor spoke then. The pact was unjust and needed to end. But he understood the giant's perspective. He proposed a compromise. The current children would be given a true choice: stay and train, or return to Kvittel. Future children would not be taken. The pact would end, but the valley's protection would remain. Skadi considered, then agreed on one condition. Thor must promise not to interfere when Ragnarok came. Thor hesitated, then nodded. He could not promise they would survive, but he could promise not to steal their choice. The children were assembled and given the option. Most of the older ones chose to stay. They were more giant than human now. But the youngest, including Ingrid, chose differently. She wanted to go home. In total, 12 children chose to return. Eric embraced his daughter. She was still cold, still changed, but she was his again. The return to Kvittel was bittersweet. 12 families were reunited, but their children were not unchanged. They were stronger, more resilient, and aged slowly. They were forever marked by their time with the giants. The perpetual winter ended the day the pact was dissolved. Spring arrived violently as 3 years of ice turned to water, but the valley survived. The protection held. The children who came back grew up strange. Ingrid grew into a woman who could break stone with her hands and climb mountains without effort. She became a mountain guide, saving countless lives. She never forgot her time with the giants, and sometimes, on the coldest winter nights, she would look toward the mountains and wonder if she'd made the right choice. If a long, ordinary life was really better than a short, glorious one. She never found an answer. In the frozen halls beneath the Norwegian mountains, 28 warriors train for Ragnarok. They are neither fully human nor fully giant. Something new. They remember Kvittel but do not regret their choice. They have purpose. When the end comes, they will be ready. The valley of Kvittel experiences normal seasons now, but the villagers remember. They teach their children about the pact, the choice, and the price their ancestors paid for survival. Some choices save you, some choices doom you, and some choices do both. Everyone paid a price, but life continues, as it always does, until Ragnarok comes, and the choices made today determine who survives tomorrow. This has been the Valley of Unchanging Snow. Like and subscribe to our channel if you enjoy this content. And comment below where in the world you're listening from.